My name is Olivia Thompson. I'm 28 years old, and for most of my life, my family spoke about me as if I were a temporary phase, something unfinished, something waiting to fail. I grew up as the youngest daughter in the Thompson family, which meant I was always standing just outside the circle. Not excluded outright, just overlooked. My older sister Amber had a way of filling every room she entered. Loud laughter, big opinions, constant reassurance from my parents that she was finding herself. I was the quiet one, the responsible one, the one they never worried about, because worrying required believing I mattered. The pattern started early. When Amber graduated high school with barely passing grades, my parents threw her a party at a crowded Italian restaurant, complete with balloons and speeches about her potential. When I graduated 3 years later as valedictorian, my mother hugged me in the kitchen and said, "That's nice, sweetheart," before asking if Amber had heard back from a retail job she wanted. When Amber moved into her first apartment downtown, my parents helped her pack, paid her security deposit, and furnished the place like it was a reward. When I bought my first house at 25, my father frowned and asked if I'd thought it through. That house mattered more than they ever understood. It was a modest 3-bedroom ranch in Lakewood, Colorado. Nothing dramatic, no granite countertops or vaulted ceilings, but it was mine. Every dollar that went into the down payment came from long hours at my government job, skipped vacations, and a lifestyle so careful it bordered on boring. The day I got the keys, I stood alone in the empty living room and cried. Not because I was overwhelmed, but because for the first time, something in my life existed without my family's permission. I called them anyway. "You bought a house?" my mother asked, skepticism threading every word. "It's a good investment," I said, already bracing myself. Amber laughed in the background. "She can barely handle car payments. This is going to be a disaster." My father took the phone. "Houses are a lot of responsibility, Olivia. What if something breaks? What if you lose your job?" I hung up feeling smaller than I had moments earlier. Over the next few years, the house became a running joke. Every family dinner included a comment about my chains or how renting was smarter. Amber loved reminding everyone how flexible her life was, how unburdened, while implying I was trapped by a mistake. Meanwhile, she drifted between jobs, always borrowing money, always supported. Somehow, her instability was interpreted as freedom. My stability was seen as risk. The only person who never questioned me was my boyfriend, Daniel. We'd been together 2 years, long distance more often than not because of our careers. He listened when I talked about work. He asked questions. He believed me. Last summer, I accepted a temporary overseas assignment, 6 months in Eastern Europe, high-level administrative oversight tied to financial investigations. I couldn't explain much, not to my family, not even to Daniel, but the work was important and the compensation was significant. Before I left, I arranged everything: automatic payments, lawn care, security upgrades. I installed a comprehensive system and registered my address as required by protocol. I handed my parents a spare key. "This is for emergencies only," I said, looking directly at Amber. "Burst pipes, break-ins, nothing else." She rolled her eyes. "You act like it's a bunker." My mother sighed. All this for a basic house. I swallowed my response and boarded the plane 2 days later. Overseas, my world sharpened. The work was consuming. Long days, classified briefings, patterns hidden in spreadsheets that connected crimes across borders. For the first time in my life, I felt unquestionably capable. Calls home were brief. Everyone said everything was fine. "House still standing," Amber joked once. "No disasters yet." I believed her. When my assignment was extended by a month, my father texted back, "Take all the time you need. We've got things covered." What I didn't know was that my absence looked like failure to someone who had always expected it. Amber drove past my house, noticed the lights were off, told herself a story, one where she was the hero and I was quietly unraveling. And while I was tracking financial crimes halfway across the world, my sister was watching my life, waiting for proof that she had been right about me all along. By the third month overseas, time stopped behaving normally. Days blurred together under fluorescent lights and classified briefings. I slept when I could, ate when I remembered, and lived almost entirely inside secure rooms where no one asked about my family, my house, or whether I was handling things. Out there, none of that mattered. What mattered was accuracy, patterns, precision. And I was good at it. Too good, according to my supervisor. "You're indispensable right now," he told me during one late-night review. "We're extending your assignment." One more month, that was all. I texted my parents through the approved channel, told Daniel. Everyone said the same thing. "Of course. Take care of your work. Everything here is fine." Amber added a smiley face. I didn't hear the edge in that message until much later. From her perspective, my silence confirmed everything she had always believed. I was gone too long, too quiet, too proud to admit I was drowning. She told herself she was worried. That's how it started. She told herself she was being responsible. She drove by my house more often after that. At first it was casual, just checking. Then it became intentional. She noticed the lawn looked too neat, proof someone else was handling it. She noticed no lights at night, no car in the driveway. She asked a neighbor if I'd been back recently. When they said no, something in her settled. I knew it, she thought. She can't keep this up. Amber didn't see my bank accounts. She didn't see the automatic payments clearing like clockwork. She didn't see the financial buffers I'd built deliberately, quietly. She saw what she wanted to see. She started with phone calls. First, the mortgage company, pretending to be a concerned sister. She asked vague questions, asked if everything was on track. When they refused to give details, she escalated, claimed I'd authorized her to help while I was overseas, asked hypotheticals about missed payments. Then she created the proof she needed. Fake letters. Mock foreclosure notices copied from images online. She practiced my signature at night, tracing it until muscle memory took over. Amber had always been good with details when she wanted something badly enough. In high school, she'd forged signatures on permission slips without getting caught once. She convinced herself this was the same thing, just bigger, just necessary. My parents never questioned her. Why would they? Amber came armed with documents, explanations, urgency. She cried in the kitchen, told them she was scared for me. "She's behind," Amber said. "She's embarrassed. You know how she is. She didn't want you to worry." And just like that, the story locked into place. While I was coordinating with international agencies on financial networks that spanned continents, my sister was coordinating with real estate agents. She found one who didn't ask too many questions, a title company that accepted documents at face value. Buyers who trusted the process because they wanted to believe in it. Robert and Sarah Martinez, a young couple, first-time buyers, everything earnest and hopeful. The sale moved quickly, faster than it should have. Amber pushed urgency, foreclosure pending, seller overseas, paperwork already approved. She signed my name with practiced confidence. The day the sale closed, she went home and poured herself a glass of wine. "I fixed it," she told my parents. "I fixed everything." The irony was brutal, because the moment the paperwork was filed, systems far beyond Amber's understanding woke up. My address was flagged, not because someone cared about my mortgage, but because unauthorized transactions involving registered federal properties don't go unnoticed. Algorithms caught it first. Humans followed. I was called into a secure office during what was supposed to be my final week. "Agent Thompson," my supervisor said, tone carefully neutral, "we have an irregularity." He slid a report across the table. "Property transfer. Ownership claim. Filed in Colorado." My stomach dropped so fast I felt dizzy. "That's not possible," I said. "I own that house. There hasn't been any transaction." "That's exactly why it's flagged," he replied. "Real estate fraud is sometimes used to compromise federal employees. Until we know more, this is treated as a potential security concern." I stared at the paper, my name typed neatly under a signature I didn't recognize as mine. Someone had sold my house. I wasn't allowed to call home. Not yet. not until protocols were followed, not until I was cleared to leave. The flight back to Denver was agony. I replayed every interaction in my head, every call, every joke Amber had made, every reassurance I'd accepted because it was easier than doubting my own family. Daniel met me at the airport, took one look at my face, and didn't ask questions. He just held my hand while I drove straight past his place, past my parents, and toward Lakewood. The house looked normal from the street. That was the worst part. Same siding, same windows, same quiet neighborhood. But there was a lockbox on the front door, and a bright red sold sign planted in the lawn, the name of a real estate company printed beneath it. My key didn't work. My hand shook as I dialed the number on the sign. A cheerful voice answered. "This is Olivia Thompson," I said, forcing my voice steady. "Someone put a sold sign on my house, and I need to know why." There was a pause. "Oh," the woman said lightly. "You must be the sister. Amber told us you might call." The ground shifted beneath me. "She said you'd been struggling with the payments and finally agreed to let her handle the sale. Congratulations on getting out from under that mortgage." I ended the call without another word. In that moment, standing on my own porch, locked out of my own life, I realized something with terrifying clarity. Amber hadn't just watched my absence. She'd used it. I sat in my car for a full minute after hanging up, staring at the front door like it might explain itself if I waited long enough. The lockbox gleamed in the afternoon sun. Temporary, impersonal. Something you put on a house that didn't belong to you anymore. Daniel squeezed my hand. "Liv, talk to me." "She sold it," I said. My voice sounded distant, like it was coming from someone else's mouth. "Amber sold my house." He didn't argue, didn't try to soften it. He just exhaled slowly, like someone bracing for impact. "Okay, then we deal with it." I nodded, even though nothing about this felt manageable. I drove straight to my parents' house in Westminster. The familiar street, the trimmed hedges, the porch light I'd known since childhood, it all looked exactly the same. Like time hadn't moved at all, while my life had been dismantled in my absence. Inside, the house smelled like roasted chicken and optimism. There was a banner stretched across the living room wall. "Congratulations, Amber." I stopped just inside the doorway. Amber was sitting in my father's recliner, legs crossed, holding court like she always had. My mother hovered nearby, refilling drinks. My father laughed too loudly at something Amber said. "And the best part," Amber was saying, "is she doesn't have to worry about property taxes or HOA fees anymore. I basically gave her back her freedom." "There she is," my mother exclaimed when she saw me. She rushed over and hugged me tightly. "You're home. We were just talking about you." I looked around the room. Every face was warm, proud, relieved. They believed her. "Where's Amber?" I asked, even though she was 10 feet away. My mother smiled. "Right there. Isn't she incredible?" Amber turned, smirking when she saw my expression. "Hey, sis. Welcome back to reality." I didn't sit down. "What did you do to my house?" She rolled her eyes. "I solved your problem." "My problem," I repeated. "You were clearly in over your head," she said calmly, like she was explaining something obvious. "Gone for months, probably behind on payments. I stepped in, found a buyer, handled the paperwork. You should be thanking me. That wasn't your house to sell." My father's voice cut in gently. "Amber showed us everything, Olivia. You were 3 months behind. The bank was starting foreclosure proceedings." I felt the room tilt. "That's impossible," I said. "All my payments are automatic. I've never missed one." "The bank records don't lie," Amber said smoothly. "Look, I know this is embarrassing, but I handled it quietly. You actually walked away with $18,000. Where is it?" "I deposited it into your account," she said, "minus the money you owed me for handling everything." My chest tightened. I never authorized any of this. I never signed a power of attorney. My mother touched my arm. "Sweetheart, we have your signature. Maybe the stress overseas affected your memory." That's when it clicked. Amber hadn't just lied. She'd prepared. "I want to see the documents," I said. She smiled like she'd been waiting for that, reached into a folder on the coffee table and handed me a stack of papers. There it was. My name. My signature. Perfectly replicated. Too perfect. I stared at it, cold spreading through my veins. Amber had always been good at copying things. In high school, she'd forged report cards, permission slips, anything that stood between her and accountability. I don't remember signing this, I said quietly. You signed it the day before you left, she replied without hesitation. You were stressed. You said it was just in case of emergencies. Everyone nodded. In their version of reality, this made sense. My phone vibrated in my pocket. A secure message. Agent Thompson, immediate debrief required. Federal crime reported at your registered address. Are you secure? I typed back. With family. Secure. Call within the hour. My father noticed my distraction. Everything okay? Just work, I said. Amber leaned forward, curiosity flickering in her eyes. Any issues with the buyer? Closing went smoothly, right? What are their names? I asked. Robert and Sarah Martinez, she said. Sweet couple, late 20s, so excited. My phone rang again. Unknown number. I stepped into the kitchen and answered. Is this Olivia Thompson? A man asked, voice tight with panic. Yes. This is James Patterson from Patterson and Associates. We represented the buyers in the purchase of your property. My grip tightened on the counter. Why are FBI agents at your office? There was a sharp inhale. They have a warrant. They're confiscating all documents related to the sale. They're saying the transaction may be fraudulent and tied to national security violations. I closed my eyes. Mr. Patterson, I said calmly, I never authorized the sale of my house. My sister forged my signature. What? Papers rustled frantically. Voices shouted in the background. My property is registered with federal authorities due to my clearance, I continued. Any unauthorized transaction triggers an automatic investigation. There was silence. Then, faintly, oh God. Are the buyers with you? I asked. Yes, they're terrified. They spent their life savings. They're victims, I said. Tell them to cooperate fully. The federal recovery process will handle restitution. I hung up and walked back into the living room. Amber looked up expectantly. Everything good? I sat down across from her. Amber, you need to understand something. My house isn't just a house. It's registered with federal authorities. She laughed. Come on, Olivia. Don't be dramatic. The FBI is currently confiscating every document related to the sale, I said quietly. They're treating this as wire fraud, identity theft, and illegal transfer of protected property. The room went silent. That's ridiculous, my father said. Amber was helping. There was nothing to help, I replied. I never missed a payment. I never signed anything. Before anyone could respond, car doors slammed outside. Heavy footsteps approached the front door. Olivia Thompson, a voice called out. Federal Bureau of Investigation. I stood. In here. 4 agents entered, badges visible. One nodded at me professionally. Agent Thompson, he said. Then he turned to Amber. Amber Thompson, he continued. You are under arrest for wire fraud, identity theft, and illegal transfer of federally monitored property. Amber's face drained of color. What? She whispered. I was helping her. Handcuffs clicked shut around her wrists. My mother screamed. My father stared in disbelief. As they led Amber out, she looked back at me, confused, betrayed, terrified. I was trying to save you, she said. I met her gaze. You never asked if I needed saving. The front door closed behind the agents with a sound that seemed to vacuum the air out of the room. Silence followed, thick, disbelieving, wrong. My mother sank onto the couch as if her legs had simply stopped obeying her. My father stood frozen near the fireplace, eyes fixed on the empty space where Amber had been moments earlier. The Congratulations Amber banner drooped behind him, one corner peeling away from the wall, suddenly obscene. I don't understand, my mother whispered. She was helping. One of the agents, calm, practiced, turned back toward them. Ma'am, your daughter committed multiple federal felonies, forged documents, identity theft, illegal transfer of federally monitored property. Federally monitored, my father echoed, as if the words were in a foreign language. Yes, the agent replied. Due to your other daughter's security clearance. All eyes shifted to me. For most of my life, I had stood in that room trying to be smaller, quieter, easier to overlook. Now I felt the weight of their attention settle on me like a spotlight I hadn't asked for. "I told you what my job involved," I said softly. "You just never listened." The agents asked routine questions: names, dates, confirmation of relationships. I answered automatically, my voice steady even as something inside me trembled with delayed shock. Daniel stood near the doorway, silent, watchful, his presence grounding in a way I didn't have words for. When the agents finally left, taking copies of everything Amber had shown off so proudly, the house felt hollowed out. My mother covered her face. "How could she do this?" My father's voice cracked. "How could we not see it?" No one answered. That night I didn't sleep. Daniel drove me back to his place, but I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment I'd ignored. Every joke, every dismissal, every time I'd chosen silence over confrontation because it felt safer. The next weeks unfolded with brutal efficiency. Amber was formally charged. Wire fraud, identity theft, forgery, illegal transfer of protected property. Each count landed like a stone dropped into still water, ripples spreading outward into every corner of our lives. The real estate agent lost her license pending investigation. The title company faced federal scrutiny for failing to verify documents properly. The buyers, Robert and Sarah, were interviewed repeatedly, their shock etched into every report. I spoke to them once, over the phone. "We didn't know," Sarah said, her voice trembling. "We thought everything was legitimate." "I know," I replied. "I'm so sorry." They were victims too. Collateral damage in a story none of us would ever forget. My parents avoided my calls at first. When they finally asked to meet, we sat at the same kitchen table where Amber had once cried about my supposed failures. "We believed her," my mother said quietly, "because it fit what we already thought." "That I couldn't manage my own life," I said. My father nodded, tears streaking down his face. "We were wrong." It wasn't an apology, not fully, but it was closer than I'd ever heard them come. The house became evidence. My house. Federal seals went up, access restricted, monitoring increased. I wasn't allowed back inside for months. The irony wasn't lost on me. Amber's attempt to free me from responsibility had placed my life under even tighter scrutiny. Amber pleaded guilty. At sentencing, she finally stopped pretending. "I convinced myself she was failing," she told the judge, voice shaking, "because I couldn't accept that my younger sister was more successful than me." She didn't look at me when she said it. 4 years in federal prison. When the sentence was read, my mother sobbed openly. My father stared straight ahead, jaw clenched, like a man watching a future collapse that he'd helped build. I felt nothing. Or maybe I felt everything too slowly to register yet. Months passed. Work resumed. Life found a rhythm again. Daniel stayed, quietly unwavering, even when the weight of it all pressed down on both of us. He never asked me to be less affected, never tried to rush me through it. 6 months later, the house was released from evidence. The day I walked back inside, the air smelled faintly of dust and disinfectant. The furniture sat exactly where I'd left it. The walls bore small marks where agents had mounted equipment temporarily. It was still mine. Security had been upgraded, monitoring intensified. My sanctuary now came with layers of protection I hadn't asked for, but had earned through survival. Amber served her sentence. During those years, my parents changed, slowly, awkwardly. Conversations shifted. Questions replaced assumptions. They stopped speaking about me and started speaking to me. When Amber was released on parole, she asked to see me. I agreed. She stood in my living room, the same one where she'd been arrested, hands folded nervously in front of her, eyes downcast. "I really thought I was helping you," she said. "I know," I replied, "but you never once asked me if I needed help." She swallowed. "I couldn't believe you were doing better than me." "That was never my problem to solve," I said gently. She nodded, tears slipping free. "I destroyed everything because I couldn't handle the truth." We sat in silence after that, not reconciled, not enemies. Just two people finally seeing each other clearly, maybe for the first time. After she left, I stood alone in my house and let myself breathe. The case became a cautionary tale in federal training seminars, a reminder that crimes committed in the name of help are still crimes, that assumptions can be dangerous when paired with entitlement. For me, it was something simpler, a lesson in visibility. I had been competent all along, capable, stable. They just hadn't wanted to see it. And sometimes, the cost of being unseen is far higher than anyone expects. Time has a way of... In the months after Amber's sentencing, my life settled into something that looked almost ordinary from the outside. I returned to work full-time. I traveled less. Daniel and I finally lived in the same city. On paper, everything aligned the way people like to imagine recovery should look. But internally, I was still recalibrating. The hardest part wasn't the legal aftermath or the public knowledge of what my sister had done. It was the quiet conversations with my parents, the ones where they tried to reconcile the daughter they thought they knew with the woman standing in front of them. "We thought you needed saving," my mother said once, staring into her tea instead of at me. "You thought I needed controlling," I replied, not unkindly. She nodded, lips pressed together. We confused the two. My father struggled more. He had spent years framing my achievements as risks and Amber's chaos as personality. Accepting that he'd been wrong meant accepting he'd failed both of us in different ways. "We trusted confidence over consistency," he admitted one night, "and we mistook noise for competence." It was the closest thing to an apology I'd ever received. Amber wrote me letters from prison at first. Long ones. Pages filled with reflection, regret, and explanations that blurred the line between accountability and self-pity. I read them all. I didn't respond to most. 4 years is a long time to sit with your own choices. By the time Amber was released on parole, the world had moved forward without her. Credit ruined, career destroyed, reputation irreparable. She worked nights at a distribution center under supervision and lived in a halfway house that smelled like disinfectant and resignation. When she asked to visit my house, I hesitated. Not because I was afraid, but because I wasn't sure what she wanted from me anymore. She arrived on a gray afternoon, hands clasped tightly, eyes scanning the walls like they might judge her. "It is," I replied, "mostly." We sat at the kitchen table. No dramatics, no raised voices. Just the weight of everything unspoken between us. "I know now it wasn't about the house," she said after a long pause. "It was about me needing to be right about you." I waited. "I built my whole identity on being the capable one," she continued. "If you were doing better than me, then who was I?" I met her gaze. Someone who could have asked for help instead of stealing control. She nodded slowly. "I know." That was the moment I realized something important. Forgiveness isn't the same as restoration. I could acknowledge her regret without giving her access to my life again. I could recognize her growth without reopening doors that had nearly crushed me when they closed. When she left, we hugged, briefly, carefully. It wasn't reconciliation, it was closure. The house changed me, not because of what it represented financially, but because of what it survived. It had been locked, seized, scrutinized, and violated, yet it still stood, stronger, more protected than before. In a strange way, so did I. The case became a reference point in federal law enforcement circles. The helpful sister, they called it, a reminder that crimes often wear familiar faces, that entitlement, disguised as concern, can be more dangerous than malice. Sometimes new agents asked to meet me. "What was the hardest part?" one of them asked during a training session. I didn't hesitate. Realizing my competence was validated by strangers before it was acknowledged by my own family. That truth still stung. Robert and Sarah Martinez eventually found another home. They sent me a handwritten card once, thanking me for cooperating, for telling the truth, for not disappearing when everything went wrong. I kept it in a drawer with documents I didn't need anymore but couldn't throw away. The real estate agent lost her license permanently. The title company implemented new verification procedures. Systems were corrected, policies rewritten. Lives were altered. On quiet evenings, I sometimes stand in the living room and remember the first day I unlocked the door. How proud I'd been, how unsure, how desperate for approval I hadn't admitted wanting. I don't need that approval anymore. Daniel and I talk about the future now. Not in dramatic terms, just practical ones. Shared plans, mutual respect. The kind of partnership built on asking, not assuming. My parents still struggle sometimes. Old habits don't die easily. But they ask before advising now. They listen more than they speak. They're learning, late, imperfectly, but genuinely. And Amber, she's learning too. Some lessons arrive wrapped in consequences so severe they feel disproportionate. But emotional blindness has a cost. Ignoring reality doesn't make it disappear. It just makes the reckoning louder when it comes. My house still stands in the same quiet Lakewood neighborhood. The locks are stronger, the systems smarter, the walls unchanged. And inside them lives a woman who no longer doubts her own capability, no matter who tries to rewrite her story for her.